Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we're now going to talk about basically an effect that the subconscious has on the conscious mind. So in the previous video, we spoke about how the conscious mind and negative mind influences the positive mind or controls it to a degree. It's responsible for quantizing. It's basically like the commander and the subconscious is the servant. But in this video, we're going to basically talk about something that happens in reverse. Now, it's not the negative mind is still the one in control, but there is a reverse effect. What I like to kind of compare it to is Newton's third law, which most people kind of think, it's generally kind of expressed as for every action, there's an opposite equal reaction, right? So if you exert a force on something, it exerts an equal force back in the opposite direction. You can also say that express Newton's third law has forces always occur in pairs that have opposite directions. So that's kind of what happens with your subconscious mind and your conscious mind, right? The conscious mind kind of exerts influence on the subconscious, and when that happens, the subconscious exerts kind of a back influence on the conscious mind. So what is that? What's going on with that? Well, in the book, I use the term just made up. This is actually a real word, but I define it a little differently. So this is the term I define in the book. I call it compulsion, right? Which is very similar to the way the word is normally used. But basically, you can think of compulsion as a metaphysical force exerted on the conscious mind by the subconscious mind. So in other words, the subconscious it's like it's exerting a force on your conscious mind, right? Now, so what does that mean? It's kind of a weird lingo, right? To say it's something, a force is exerted on consciousness. Well, I like to think of it like this. So the force is experienced by the conscious mind as an urge to think or do something. So, for example, and it also results in making certain decisions harder to choose than others. So a simple example of that is basically, I think I might have put this in the book. Let's say you're dieting, right? So you want to diet, and you're like, yo, I'm not going to eat any ice cream. I think that's the example I put in the book. So you're like, I'm not eating any ice cream, no desserts, no nothing, right? Because you want to lose weight. Now, let's say you're hanging out with friends and you've been doing real good, but you're very hungry, right? And you're craving something sweet. And you go to the, you're with your friends and you go to like an ice cream store or something, I don't know. Now you're in the ice cream, let's say you're in Cold Stone. You're in the ice cream shop and they're eating ice cream and it looks mad good, right? So you're like, what are you going to feel in that situation when you see them eating ice cream, enjoying themselves, and you're very hungry and you're craving something sweet, right? How will you feel, right? You're going to feel like you really want to eat the ice cream. It's right there, super easy to order. You can join in with your friends. So what you're going to actually feel is an urge, right? You're going to feel an urge to eat or an urge to buy the ice cream or to eat something sweet. And so that urge is actually a compulsion. And that urge is actually coming from your subconscious mind. So anytime you feel something like that, this urge to do something, that's your subconscious. It's like it's exerting a force on your conscious mind. To be more specific, it's like it's exerting influence on your conscious mind. And it does that all the time. So your subconscious is always exerting some type of influence on your conscious mind, which your awareness, your conscious mind experiences as an urge, right? So I just use a term for that called compulsion. So, I mean, you can even come up with other examples, right? Let's say you're at the store shopping. You know what I mean? You go in the store and you're only like, I'm going to get this, this, and this. And you just see certain things, right? And you're like, man, I kind of want to get that too. Every time you feel that urge to kind of do this or do that, that's always a compulsion. So that's very important, right? The subconscious is always influencing. It's not like it does it sometimes. It does it all the time, continuously across the day. The conscious mind is never away for any period of time from the compulsive influence of the subconscious. So the subconscious is always compelling the conscious mind to do something, right? So, and that's kind of why in the book, I kind of make a bit of a clarification once we get to this point. So the conscious mind has before we express or we say that the conscious mind has completely free will. But that's technically not true depending on how you define it, right? Because the reason I say that, because even though, yes, it does have free will, that free will is always being influenced by your subconscious. And basically, like I said, it results in making certain decisions harder to make than other decisions. You could think of it as, it's not exactly like probability for this last point, which we'll get to, but it just makes it harder to choose certain things. So that's why it's hard for people to go on diets, right? Because as soon as they go on a diet, their subconscious compels them to eat. And that actually comes from your body, which we talk more about that in chapter 4, 4, 5, and 6. So, but for now, just know that the subconscious is exerting influence on the conscious mind to make a choice to eat something. So as long as that urge is there and that compulsion is there, the conscious mind is going to have a very hard time making a certain decision. Now, the other thing about compulsion, which we're going to get to this last point, is that compulsion, just as all subconscious thought has, a compulsion has a component of energy to it. So it can be stronger or weaker. A compulsion that's very weak is very easy to make a choice against, right? So for example, it's a good example. Let's say you're walking down the street and you see like a penny. You know what I mean? You see a penny on the ground. That's not really that big a deal. Excuse me, I know some people will care about that or they're very frugal. Like, good for them. You know what I mean? But a lot of other people probably wouldn't care about a penny. It's not enough money to be interested in. So you might feel a slight compulsion to pick it up because it's still money, but at the same time, that compulsion is going to be very, very weak. It's not going to be very strong. You know what I mean? So it's going to be very easy to make a choice not to pick up the coin. You know what I mean? If you see maybe $100 on the ground, right? The compulsion is going to be much stronger. So it's going to be much harder to make a choice, not to pick it up. If you had some reason to do that, it'd be harder to do that. Or, like I said before, when you're dieting, you know what I mean? It's easy to make the choice to eat something. Well, no, that's a terrible example because the compulsion will be to eat. But you get what I'm saying, right? If a compulsion is very weak, then it's very easy to make the choice to sort of not do it, right? Because the subconscious isn't really compelling you to do it. So the conscious mind is much more free to make decisions. But when a compulsion is very strong, the conscious mind is not as free to make decisions. It still has free will, but it's going to feel constrained. It's going to feel like it's just harder to make that decision. And that gets to this last point. So compulsions can never override free will. So what that means is that no matter how strong a compulsion gets, it's never going to be enough to just force the conscious mind to do something. So that's actually very, very important. That's an important principle regarding the dynamic between the conscious and subconscious minds. So it doesn't matter if a compulsion has enormous energy in it, right? No matter how powerful it gets, the conscious mind can always choose against it if it wants to, even if it's hard to. So a good example of that, I think I also put that in the book. Let's say there's this chick you really like. You're afraid of rejection and you want to ask her out, right? You might feel a compulsion to not ask her out of fear of rejection, right? So the urge to avoid asking her out or bringing up the topic is going to be very strong. But a guy can still do it anyway, right? In other words, he can choose against that compulsion. You know what I mean? So no matter how strong it is, you can always choose against it. And that's it's very important in this dynamic. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think this is the final section of chapter 1. But compulsion is kind of like, it's like the main, how do I want to describe it? It's basically the main sort of, if it were math or physics, I would say mathematical object, or in physics, I would say maybe a physical object, right? Or a mathematical object that describes a physical quantity. So in physics, when you're studying mechanics, everything is done in terms of kind of force diagrams and based on Newton's 3 laws. And the thing you're using to kind of explain how how everything influences each other are forces, right? Which is a push or pull, either experienced by an object or exerted on an object. And in the subconscious, in the world of the subconscious, which is kind of why I call it subconscious energy mechanics, because a lot of it is related to mechanics. The main tool you're going to use to talk about the influence of the subconscious on the conscious mind is going to be compulsion. So we're going to use that word the whole time, like, you know what I mean, for the whole series, really. I mean, for the whole curriculum for these videos, we're going to be talking about compulsion, because that's the main tool that you need to talk about the relationship. Well, the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. It's also going to be intention. So if you're talking about the influence of the conscious mind on the subconscious, then you're talking about intention. If you're talking about the influence for the subconscious on the conscious mind, then you're talking about compulsion, right? So once you have those two tools, you can easily talk about the communication, the influence between the two. So that's very important, right? So I think, yeah, like I said, that's pretty much it. Next video, we're going to move on to chapter 2. This is pretty much all of chapter 1. Just basically giving you the basic sort of framework of how the rest of the book and the curriculum is going to be set up, right? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.